Definitely the best MC I've ever been a part of. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Jeff, if you're here in the audience, thank you. Like, this is really cool. It's my first day ever in Iowa. This is a really awesome start. Wow, my name is really big there. So this is our logo. As he said, our company is called Brewster. It's your personalized address book through an understanding of your relationships. I'm normally asked, and I know this is a lot about finding our own journeys as entrepreneurs about today's event. Brewster comes from the street I grew up on as a kid, and that's where it comes from. It's nothing to do with beer. Why Brewster? Why are we working on this project? Well, people are what bring fun, meaning, and nuance into our lives. And yet, relationships are complicated. And this is sort of one of my favorite phrases. And over time, relationships, they multiply, they grow, they interconnect, they evolve. And thinking a lot about this, Jeff, who I met, who did a great job organizing this conference today, we met shortly after we released the product several weeks ago. And you see even in our relationship, right? We initially connected probably over Twitter or Facebook, then we became Facebook friends, and we emailed, and we texted, we spoke on the phone, and now here we are today, right? And you see this, and this is now one relationship I just had with Jeff, and we think of all the relationships we have. The stuff gets complicated really quickly. And so I thought a lot about, like, what is relationship complexity really? More than the kind of cute phrase of relationships are complicated. And it comes down to three core components that make up the complexity of relationships. It's one, the number of people we know, the who. Two, it's the number of contexts by which we know people, the what. And three, it's the number of ways in which we communicate with people, the how. So we have these whos, we have these whats, and we have these hows. And over sociocultural evolution, things have just gotten really complicated. There was a time Jeff and I would have been in a tribe together. And we wouldn't have known a lot of folks. We would have communicated about food, water, and shelter. And we would have done so in person. It would have been pretty simple. And then you contrast that with where things are today and where things are going. The average person knows over 1,000 people, have over 1,000 people in their address book. It's a staggering number of people. And then you think of all the whats. We live such multi-dimensional lives today. We go to different schools, we move to different cities, we take on different interests. And as that's changing with you, it's changing with each of these 1,000+ people that you know. It's a lot to keep in mind. And then you think of all these hows, all the ways in which we communicate. It used to be just in person. We still do that. But now we also, even picking up the phone can get complicated. Which phone number do we use? Which messaging service do we use? Which social network do we use? And all these things kind of come together. And so what Brewster is understanding just who you know and helping you define your relationships so you can connect with who you're looking for when you're looking for them. And making this complexity awesome for you. And so part of what Brewster's about is a lot of the thinking behind relationships. There's also a lot of doing. Before releasing Brewster, I worked with a spreadsheet that I had with my own account, essentially, my own prototype, for over 7 years. And so when I was in school, I was meeting all these people, and I didn't want to forget anyone. I was using Outlook. I was going to take this job that had another email service. There was Gmail, there was Facebook, there was LinkedIn, and I just wanted a place for just who I know. And so I would make a good consultant proud and put together this really awesome spreadsheet. And at its peak, it had, each row was a person, and each column were either emails, phone numbers, and all these tags I had created. And at some point, I had over 7,000 rows and over 30 tag columns. And I would go through all this stuff, and it took forever to build. And then every week, I kept it up to date. And it's through a lot of this work that actually helped me think about all of the stuff about how complicated relationships are and how we could use the social web to build this for people instead of thousands of my own hours, for everyone to do this within minutes by downloading the app. And so what I want to do is do a quick demo of Brewster, and then I'll sort of just share a few the lessons learned. So you get started by using the app. If you guys have iPhones, we're iPhone only, so you can download the app. You get started by bringing together everyone you know, any way you know them, from any of these different networks. And what we do is we create personalized profiles that are merged together. So your iPhone contacts will fix your iPhone contacts. You have multiple Steve Greenwoods in there. Your Gmail contacts, Facebook and LinkedIn, et cetera. We'll keep them always up to date. So as it changes someone's email, or it changes what city they're in, or changes what job they have, we update it. And then most importantly, it's private, right? So there are ways in which you share your connections. So I think, again, picking on Jeff and I think are now Facebook friends. So we sort of declared this publicly as we're using Facebook as a way to communicate with each other. But then privately, I have all the different relationships I have, whether some are on Facebook, some are just in my iPhone contact list. So first thing that happens when you come into Brewster and you create your account is you see all the people you know, and we organize them using our algorithms to figure out your closest relationships. And so there's certain people that you communicate with all the time. And what you do is you select those favorite people. And so now when you open the app, the first thing you can do is always initiate new communication fastest way possible. And you see those little icons. I'll actually try to use this pointer thingy. The last way I communicated with Mr. Kyle Dobbs was via text message. And so if I would click that, boom, right into the text message app. If I click on Eric Olson, I click the mail icon, boom, right into the mail client. And so you still communicate exactly the way you do today, but it's in some sense the modern day speed dial. Except it's not just for calling, it's texting and emailing as well. And then the average user selects about 12 favorites. And then the algorithm takes over below. And so everyone below is sort of organized by we're seeing your frequency of communication with them. And it changes just as your relationship with people change. The next thing you see here are updates. So there are the few people you communicate with all the time, and then there's all these, again, the 1,000 people that you have in your address book. And you're trying to, capture them at these right inflection points. So if someone moved a city, someone is now losing touch, or someone is, changed jobs, we'll display it here in these updates, and this is something I look at every single morning, kind of wake up, take a look at what's new, and then I can click one of these big photos and then message them in any way I'd like. And it's kind of a magic trick that you can sort of see this in one place and it's private to you and you're seeing the updates unique to your access to your relationship to them. This is pretty amazing. This is the most powerful people search engine you've ever had on your phone. We essentially bring together all these 1,000+ relationships you have, all the associated information you know about them, and give it to you right in a search box. And so you see here, we geolocate where you are. And so if you download the app today and you signed up, or if you have it right now on your phone, you'll see it says Des Moines, Iowa. And you click it, and we'll show you who do you know that's here in the city. And we show you some suggestions below, so we help explain that you can search more than by just name, but you can just type anything in there. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, my mom wanted to go to see a comedy show when she was coming to New York, and I didn't know much about comedy shows. So I just typed in comedy club, and one of my best friends, who I've known for years, showed up as one of my top results. So I messaged him, I asked, hey, do you have any advice on where we should go to this comedy show with my mom? Wrote me back paragraphs response. This show for this, this for this, my dad might also like this, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked him, how did you actually know all this? And this was before we launched, and I was kind of testing it. And it turned out not only had he checked in on Foursquare in different comedy clubs, not only had he worked previously at a comedy club, but he actually even used to perform in a comedy club. And it was like a magic trick, right? You have all these relationships with people, and you say, wow, I never knew you liked to ski, or I never knew you were from Iowa originally. I never knew my friend Dan used to perform in a comedy club. And so just how this looks, if you were to type in designer, let's say you're looking for a designer for your startup, or you're looking to learn more about design, we'll show you, again, all your relationships organized by context. So you'll see there, 57 people I know have the word designer in their employment. And I show you the top 6 relationships right here, but then you can click the 57 bar, and then we'll show you the full grid of everyone. Below that, the education. Below that would be the industry. Below that, more. This is the view of the full grid view, but this is also if you can create your own lists within Brewster. So there are lists we build for you, we call them smart lists, and then the lists you can build yourselves, excuse me. And this is an example of like a soccer team list. And you can see there at the bottom, you can click the mail icon to message all of them, you can click the text icon to text them all, you can create a list from the search result, etc. This is the view of what a profile looks in the app. Very different from any other sort of profile view you've seen somewhere else. We bring in the different photos you have, and that's where you see the little pagination dots. So maybe there's one photo of a person from Facebook, one from LinkedIn, one from Foursquare, Twitter. And then below that, you'll see all the different info from their education, where they're from, their mutual connections you have with them across all these networks, all the interests they have, all their emails and phone numbers and services, et cetera. And this is just the list view of the different lists that we create for you automatically. And that's the essence of what Brewster is. It's really amazing when you see the faces that you know when you create your account and look at it. I also put together a few notes on just generally about kind of like my lessons learned and stuff. And so first, kind of like as an entrepreneur, what should you do when thinking about a startup? 2, how do you do it? And then 3, why do you do it? And hopefully this is helpful. First with what should you do? I think I tried to explain in the beginning, I think it's, for me, and I think it's helpful for everyone when you're working on something to have some sort of compelling vision of what you think the idealized future is for what you're trying to build, and have a framework by which you think about it. Fred Wilson is you probably know who Fred Wilson is. He's the early investor in Twitter. He's a partner at Union Square Ventures in New York. He's our lead investor, and what Fred will talk a lot about is what is the atomic unit of your startup. And for us, for Twitter, it's the tweet, and for Instagram, it's the photo. For us, it's the relationship. And it's an important distinction to make, right? Because it's not the contact card for us. It's not the email address. It's not the phone number. It's the relationship. And the reason this is important is because all your product decisions, all your hiring decisions, all your investment decisions, all relate back to what is the atomic unit of what you're trying to build. And so it's important up front as best you can to figure out what that is that you're focused on. And the other kind of really important thing with that is when you're talking with other people, you'll get lots of great feedback, you'll get lots of great ideas, and it's very easy to lose sight of what you're trying to do and what is the soul of your startup. And really having a clear sense of what your vision is, this framework to think about it, and this sort of atomic unit really helps clarify thinking, or at least it does for me. The second thing is around solving a problem you're really obsessive compulsive about. And for me, obviously, the 7 years working on this spreadsheet probably qualified as something I was pretty obsessive about. And in fact, I actually didn't even used to tell people about it because I thought it was so crazy and that no one would ever want it. And I didn't even think it was a business. But it really gave me thousands of hours to think about all this stuff and just be doing it and why it was helpful. And it's amazing, today when obviously the product looks a lot more beautiful than the spreadsheet I had, and it does a lot more magical things. I think back to that spreadsheet and some of these kind of basic assumptions we make of what would be valuable to a person every single day. And I think another thing related to that is think about like the subway test, or in New York City we call it the subway test, of if you can explain what your startup is in one line, or if you were sitting on a subway and you saw 2 other people talking to each other, what would they say? Hey, download Brewster, it's blah, 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 right? Being able to say, that's what that one line is. The second thing is understanding who your user is. Again, it seems like a really simple question, but it's actually amazingly hard. And if I learned one thing in business school, it was probably this, just knowing who your customer is, really clearly identifying it. The third thing is, what is the clear problem you're solving for them? And is it a real problem? The fourth thing is, are you providing a 10x solution to what they have today. You know, you're this new startup, you release this product, you're so proud of it, and to get into the everyday routines of different users, you have to offer a solution that's 10x what they're doing today to break through and become part of their daily routine. And then lastly, obviously, having the secret sauce to be able to execute on all this. The other thing, so that's kind of the what you should do. The how you should do it. Yeah, this is really interesting. I was thinking about this morning, that a lot of time people think of entrepreneurs as risk takers. And actually, great entrepreneurs manage risk. There are so many risks in doing a startup, right? You have funding risk, you have product risk, you have user risk, you have all these sort of risks out there. And what you try to do is think about how you manage risk. And how that works very tactically is you have this idealized future of where you want to go. This is what my service looks like when it's, the whole world is using it, it's the most amazing thing ever. And try to work backwards in clear, measurable, and specific ways around certain milestones of what you're going to try to do along that journey. And I'm first going to do this, and that will require me to acquire these users, to build a product that has these features, and to have funding to do this. Then I'm going to get to this next milestone, and this next milestone. And when you break it up into these smaller chunks, you're isolating all these different variables, and then you're also going to learn along the way. And there's a lot of talk in this sort of startup community around trying to iterate rapidly. This is the way I think about it, around these different specific, clear milestones that you're trying to hit. You still have this idealized future where you're going, but then knowing along the way the specific steps you're taking along that journey. And then lastly was just why you should do this. For those of you here who are entrepreneurs, I'm sure we all share this sort of, in this journey, that this is not all that glamorous, right? It's really a lot of work, it's really hard, it's really very personal to you. You put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. And this is something that you should think of for yourself, of what impact you're trying to make on the world, why you're doing this for yourself. I think, making sure you're not ever doing something to do a quick flip, right? You really should be doing something because you have this passion in it. Because it's so hard when you have these ups and downs. You want to make sure you have that sort of almost that irrational passion behind it that you're going to pull through. You're going to keep pushing. You're going to keep pushing to make it work. And then I also think a lot about what I'm trying to learn for myself and sort of how I can grow. And what are the things I'm trying to do to make this not only an amazing service for users and something that is great for everyone to enjoy, but also something that, how do I get better as a person, as an entrepreneur? And also for our whole team, how do we as a team work as great as we can together and be the best team we can be, but also as individuals. What are the things we all want to learn to be the best we can be individually at each of our individual roles? And we use this phrase a lot, or I use this phrase a lot, is transformational. How do we build not only transformational service, but have a transformational journey for each of us? So anyway, these are some of the thoughts I had on the plane ride out here this morning. Hopefully they're not totally crazy. And I think I have a lot of time left. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I happen to have a question for you.
Yes.
Hey guys, if anyone has a question, please jump up behind any of these mics right here to go for that. So of course, with Brewster, you connect to your community. It's easy for you to access them. My question to you is, these are people that it seems like you're vested in. You're vested in their success. Is there any tools or things you're doing to know that they're equally vested in you on the flip side?
Within the Brewster product?
Or just in general, yeah. These are people you're vested in. These are people I communicate with on a regular basis in some capacity. How do you know that they equally care about you?
It's interesting. So, part of what makes Brewster even possible to build technically, that probably wasn't even just a few years ago, was the advent of APIs and the ability to use all the noise that's being created in the social web and convert it to signal. And as it relates specifically to that is seeing how people how they're communicating to you, what they're thinking about, and as it relates to you. So if you like the Knicks and I like the Knicks, then there's something for us to connect about, and we should discover and sort of surface that for you. And so it's really about finding ways to kind of connect on the stuff that's publicly available, and that you have access to. So it is an interesting premise we have up front, that your Brewster account is private to you. So I only have access to the information about you that I'm supposed to, right? Just like the real world. You and I just met about 20 minutes ago, right? And as our relationship evolves, there'll be more stories we share, more secrets, there'll be more things we learn about each other. And that's the same of what my profile view of you should be within my account.
Hi. Hey, I had some questions. I mean, what you're doing is really, really brilliant, and I like that you're leveraging information that people are already sharing via Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and so forth, so that if I'm someone's friend, then I can find out where they work and so forth. What I'm curious about is if you could describe a little bit about your iterative process of going from the spreadsheet to the app that you have now. And what I'm particularly interested in, because my field is in user experience and customer experience, I'm interested in what sort of things you did to harness the users driving this, because I know a lot of experience people have is like, well, I'm a user, this is going to be my experience, and that usually doesn't hold true because people they have widely disparate backgrounds and needs and so forth. So if you could talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit about your process of taking this from where you started to what you've got now, that would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you. So one of the things, and I'm sure all of you kind of thought through this as I was explaining what the app does. This is one of the most technically ambitious projects a startup will try to launch with. And so there's a lot of what we did before we released that was essentially building this basic unit, right, of bringing together everyone you know, any way you know them, merging these profiles, keeping it up to date, and keeping it private. And what we did is, during this development process of building this machine, we had a very engaged group of 100 to 200 alpha users that helped us along the journey. And then we also benefited from having a lot of different people from the tech community who sort of joined us as advisors to help with this as well. So you're right that you both want to solve your own problem, and I think that's really helpful for a lot of reasons, but you also want to be able to engage in other people, probably such as yourself, different subject matter experts that can help you take it from what the spreadsheet looked like to something as beautiful as what we had.
Hi. Honestly, I was just so inspired by your talk and the product that I came up here without really even, well, I have like a dozen questions. So since I'm not allowed to ask dozen-part questions, I'm just going to ask, are you around later? Can we hang out?
Wow. Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hi, Jill from Path 2, and I love people. I'm a connector. I too have a spreadsheet like you do in Excel.
Awesome.
The one thing that I see as an issue with relationships is that, especially the younger generation, we don't communicate as much in person anymore, and we take all these social interactions and we believe that they're actually relationships, where oftentimes we're not having real connections because we're not face to face. So do you guys have any plans in the future to validate how often you're seeing these people in person and having actual meaningful conversations like that as well?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. What we can do is, so there's two parts to this. The first part is we can only deal with what is digitally recorded, right, from the social web. And the first point of what you mentioned is that there are a lot of different ways people are communicating, and it's evolving by different groups. And so there's a lot of kind of secret sauce in our algorithms to figure out, based on the kind of person you are, what is the value of an email exchange versus a Facebook friend versus someone you're connected with on Twitter or something like that. The second point to your question is, yes, that's kind of a lot of what we're working on is our atomic unit, right, is the relationship, and so it gives us the freedom or the focus to go very deep into figuring out different ways we can get around this issue to the fact that, like, well, I guess this conversation is recorded, but let's say we were talking later. The conversation wouldn't be recorded. How do we help make sense of that and bring it into an understanding of our relationship with each other?
So, man, super inspired.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how many other ideas were you thinking about when you created Brewster? And how did you decide to pick that one over everything else because you're purchased out of Drop.io, the world's your oyster, what do I do next? So that's the question.
So I don't know if this is destructive or not, there were no other ideas I was thinking about. Right, so I think the biggest hurdle I had to overcome is I had been working on Brewster essentially for years, but it wasn't, and it's funny given my background, I never thought of it as a business. I thought of it as just trying to solve my own problem, and occasionally you're grabbing a beer with a friend, and like something comes up, and you're like, oh yeah, I created this crazy spreadsheet, and and it'd be like, wow, it's awesome. I wish you could build that for me. And like, haha, and then it would come up again, and it would kind of come up again, and then I just started thinking more about all the changes that were happening in the social web, and how could I create this spreadsheet for people automatically? But one of the other big light bulb moments for me was I had one of those conversations with a friend, and he's like, I wish you could create this for me, haha. And then he said, but wait a second, you can't, because you don't know my relationships with people. I wouldn't be able to fill in all the tags for him, right? And that was really interesting to me. And my mom, if she's watching, I'll bring her up. My mom is a relationship therapist, and I think I get a lot of this from her in thinking about relationships. And that, to me, this was not about just making Thinc work, right, or just keeping things up to date. Although that's really important stuff, and it's great value for people. But it's really understanding the relationship among people, and then through that, you get access to the right email, you get access to the right phone number. Cool, and ahead of schedule. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll be around all day today. I'd love to talk to you about your ideas and what you guys are working on. I'd love to learn more. So thank you.
Give it up.
Hey, thanks, man.
Come on, give him a little bit more.